welcome to today's deep dive because we are doing exactly that for you. Our source material today is just a single, 15-minute snapshot of a Canadian news broadcast.
And it aired just as the country was heading into the Victoria Day long weekend, right?
Right, exactly. And it acts as this incredible time capsule. So our mission today is to unpack this core sample to show you how a standard evening news update is actually this dizzying cross-section of the Canadian experience.
Yeah, it really is. We are going to start deep in the bedrock, so to speak.
Yeah.
The profound, heavy realities grounding our local neighborhoods. And then from there, we'll examine the physical and economic infrastructure we navigate every day, look at the massive national forces shaping our future, and finally, surface into the collective exhale of the spring holiday.
Yeah, but to really understand the weight of this core sample, we have to start exactly where the news anchor started because, long before anyone is talking about fireworks or weekend plans, we are hit with the sobering fragility of daily life.
It's heavy stuff right out of the gate.
It is. Imagine you're sitting down after a long Thursday, turning on the TV, and the first thing you see is the absolutely terrifying reality of a deadly overnight townhouse fire in Ottawa. This was over on Russell Road near the train yards.
It was the ultimate sudden disruption. A fire breaks out in the dark, forcing residents out of their beds and into the street.
Yeah.
The immediate aftermath leaves one person dead, several treated for minor injuries, and about 10 people entirely displaced.
And what really stands out to me is the sheer scale of the machinery that immediately mobilizes when a physical tragedy like this hits.
Right, the institutional response.
Exactly. You have Ottawa Fire putting out the blaze, Ottawa Police securing the perimeter, the Ontario Fire Marshal's office immediately launching an investigation into the cause.
And the Red Cross stepping in to find temporary accommodations for the displaced families.
Yeah, so physical order is restored almost as violently as it was broken, but then the anchor moves us to Brockville and the machinery of order looks entirely different there.
A completely different kind of tragedy.
Right. Hundreds of people are gathered for a memorial service for a mother, Wanda Elliott, and her two daughters, Michaela and Nikita, who were killed inside an apartment.
Two immense local tragedies placed back to back in the broadcast. And the Brockville case brings us to a highly complex intersection of grief and legal procedure.
Yeah.
Because a 17-year-old suspect is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder alongside assaulting a police officer.
And here's where I really struggle with the system we've built, to be honest. Under Canadian law, specifically because of the youth criminal justice rules, the 17-year-old's identity is completely shielded.
All right, that's standard under the Youth Criminal Justice Act.
But I look at the situation like hundreds of community members grieving the loss of an entire family, and they're facing this massive informational void right at the center of the tragedy.
Yeah, it creates immense friction.
I mean, how is a community supposed to process something this horrific when the details of the perpetrator are legally kept in the dark? Doesn't enforcing a blind spot just, fuel anxiety and rumors?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
What we're looking at here is the fundamental clash between physical order and procedural order.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, with the Ottawa fire, physical order is visible. The flashing lights are there, the Red Cross hands you a blanket. It's tangible restoration. But the justice system operates on procedural order.
Right.
The underlying mechanic of that youth law is the belief that a minor's brain is still developing, right? And therefore, their capacity for rehabilitation is fundamentally different from an adult's.
So the law is prioritizing the long term over the short term.
Exactly. By shielding their identity, the legal framework is prioritizing the long-term, decades-long potential of rehabilitating a minor over the immediate public demand for transparency.
But wait, the public demand for transparency isn't just about morbid curiosity. It's about processing grief. People need a narrative to make sense of the senseless.
You're entirely right. And because of that, the legal system forces the community into a holding pattern. The courts move incredibly slowly to ensure every procedural right is respected.
Which means the community is asked to trust a process they literally aren't allowed to see.
Exactly. It is a massive cognitive load to place on a grieving neighborhood. They are told to wait for justice while basically mourning in the dark.
Wow. Yeah, and while the legal system forces a community into a holding pattern, we are simultaneously being forced into holding patterns in our physical environments too.
A slightly less heavy holding pattern, thankfully.
Much less heavy. This brings us to a lighter but incredibly persistent layer of our core sample, the friction of the daily commute. If you try to drive through Ottawa right now, Canada's unofficial 5th season is in full swing.
Yes, construction season.
Always. Bank Street and Riverside Drive are essentially just seas of orange pylons and major detours right now.
It is the planned disruption we face every single spring. Hundreds of infrastructure projects are tearing up the roads that connect the very communities we were just talking about.
Yeah, and the local businesses sitting in those detour zones are already feeling the pinch of reduced foot traffic. People just avoid the area entirely.
And the broadcast weaves this local frustration directly into the broader economic picture of the country, which is fascinating.
They really do. They mentioned police ramping up patrols for impaired and aggressive driving for the holiday weekend, but then they hit us with something everyone cares about: gas prices.
An ultimate everyday economic indicator.
Exactly. Gas drops a few cents overnight in parts of Ontario. Analysts are advising people to fill up in the evening to catch the best deal.
Every penny counts.
Right, but saving $3 at the pump feels like a tiny victory for a driver dodging potholes on Bank Street. Because in the very next segment, we look at the macroeconomy and the mood completely shifts.
We zoom way out from the gas pump to the Bank of Canada.
Yes, the Bank of Canada announces they're holding interest rates unchanged. The minutes from their meeting show they are watching inflation carefully, being patient.
But warning that conditions could change quickly if inflation starts to rise again.
Right. And meanwhile, the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, ends the week higher. It's driven by tech and financials, surfing on the optimism of major domestic infrastructure discussions.
It's a very mixed signal for the average person.
It is. I have to push back on this Bank of Canada strategy because the messaging feels wildly contradictory. If the TSX is booming and government infrastructure projects are everywhere, why is the Bank of Canada acting like we are teetering on the brink of disaster? Like, why not cut rates and let people enjoy the boom? Are they basically treating inflation like the weather, hoping for sunshine, but keeping an umbrella right by the door?
That's a good analogy, but it's deeper than that. It's because they are terrified of the mechanics of sticky inflation.
Wait, sticky inflation, meaning it just gets attached to things permanently.
Precisely. I mean, the Bank of Canada isn't just looking at the price of gas today, right? They're looking at human psychology and corporate planning.
Oh, so how we expect prices to behave.
Exactly. When inflation is high for a long period, it gets baked into our expectations. Workers demand higher multi-year salaries to afford groceries.
And then businesses just raise their long-term prices to cover those higher salaries.
Right. And the cycle perpetuates itself, even if the initial cause, like a supply chain shock, has completely resolved. That is sticky inflation.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It does. And interest rates are a blunt instrument with a massive lag effect. If the bank cuts rates too soon because the stock market looks good, borrowing becomes cheap again.
Right, suddenly everyone is taking out loans to buy houses or expand businesses.
Exactly. Demand outstrips supply, and inflation skyrockets all over again. But if they raise rates too high, they choke off all borrowing, companies lay off workers, and we crash into a recession.
Talk about a tightrope walk.
It really is. The bank is holding rates steady because they're waiting to see if the medicine they've already administered has fully cured the inflation psychology or just temporarily suppressed the symptoms.
Yeah, that actually reframes the orange pylons on Bank Street for me. It's easy to look at a detour and just see an annoyance.
Oh, for sure.
But on a macro level, those infrastructure projects are massive economic stimulants. Government contracts, material purchases, thousands of construction jobs.
Yep. The TSX is rising because money is moving. Our localized headache is actually just the friction of national economic gears turning.
And those local infrastructure projects are just a micro version of what is happening at the absolute highest levels of the Canadian economy, right?
Exactly. The broadcast mention of the stock market reacting to infrastructure discussions pivots us directly into the realm of national projects and global exports.
Which brings us to a massive layer of our core sample, pipeline politics.
A very heavy topic.
Yeah. The news highlights that Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle are moving closer to a new agreement on a proposed West Coast oil pipeline project.
The goal here is advancing a new export route for Alberta oil to hit global markets.
Now, as we report this, we are keeping strictly to the facts of the broadcast without taking any political stance. But the broadcast notes that while an agreement is near, federal officials are pointing out that several conditions still need finalizing.
Right, and this is where regional economic interests collide with national and international policy frameworks.
I was thinking about how the broadcast transitions from this high-stakes political negotiation straight into sports. Like, Team Canada opens the IIHF Men's World Championship with a 5-3 victory over Sweden.
Securing the win with a strong offensive performance late in regulation.
Yeah. Now think about the mechanics of a hockey game, particularly a power play. One team has an overwhelming numerical advantage and pins the opponent in their zone.
And the defending team doesn't have the leverage to attack. They just have to survive the clock and clear the puck.
Exactly. When I look at provincial and federal pipeline negotiations, it feels like a political power play. A premier holds the resource, the physical leverage, but the prime minister controls the regulatory clock.
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
But what I want to know is, mechanically, what do these lingering federal conditions actually look like in the real world? Are they just bureaucratic stalling tactics, or do they serve a functional purpose?
Well, it is tempting to view federal conditions as just political red tape, like a way to run out the clock. But functionally, they are the architectural blueprints of a compromise.
Okay, blueprints how?
When Premier Smith and Prime Minister Carney sit down, they are mandated to protect entirely different things. A provincial premier's job is heavily focused on extracting regional resources and driving local economic growth.
Makes sense.
But a prime minister is legally obligated to balance that extraction against national climate targets, interprovincial trade laws, and Indigenous land rights.
So the condition is the bridge between those two legal obligations.
Yes. Mechanically, a federal condition might take the form of a strict liability cap.
Yeah.
For example, if a spill occurs in a neighboring province or ocean port, who actually pays for the cleanup?
Oh, I see.
The federal condition dictates the exact financial responsibility model before a single shovel hits the dirt. Or a condition might mandate a specific revenue-sharing mechanism with Indigenous communities whose lands the pipeline crosses.
So these aren't just hurdles. They are the actual contractual mechanisms that allow a localized resource to safely cross multiple legal jurisdictions and reach an international port.
Precisely. The fact that the broadcaster's reporting agreement is near suggests they are finally locking down the math on those specific liabilities and revenues.
Wow, we've drilled down through so much heavy material today. We started with the terrifying disruption of local tragedies and the slow, frustrating friction of the legal system. We navigated the orange pylons of our daily commutes, dug into the psychology of sticky inflation, and looked at the complex contractual machinery required to move Canadian oil to the global stage.
We have asked a lot of you, our listener, to process all of this.
We really have, and that is exactly what the Daily News does. But finally, at the top of our core sample, the broadcast delivers the exhale.
The arrival of the long weekend.
Yes. You've been dodging lane closures, calculating whether a 3-cent drop in gas is enough to outrun your inflation anxiety, and absorbing the heavy news of fires and court cases.
It's exhausting.
And your reward at the end of the week. The forecast for the Victoria Day long weekend shows Ottawa climbing into the low 20s, potentially nearing 28 degrees by Monday.
With similar warmth rolling across southern Ontario and Quebec.
Sure, there's a slight chance of scattered showers because, we all know the radar app is a Canadian's best friend on a long weekend. But overall, the weather is finally cooperating.
And that favorable weather triggers a massive cultural and economic event in the capital.
Right, the tulip.
Exactly. The broadcast closes by highlighting that we are entering one of the busiest periods for the Canadian Tulip Festival. Hundreds of thousands of tulips are hitting peak bloom around Dow's Lake and Commissioners Park.
And that pulls in both domestic and international visitors. It is just this brilliant burst of color and relief after a heavy week.
It really is.
But knowing how everything is connected in this core sample, I imagine the Tulip Festival isn't just about stopping to smell the flowers, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, mechanically, a festival of this scale is a massive economic engine. It draws vital tourism dollars, fills hotel rooms, and drives foot traffic to the very local businesses that have been bleeding revenue due to the Bank Street construction we talked about earlier.
Oh, right. So it's the microeconomy repairing itself.
Exactly. But beyond the economics, the festival serves a vital psychological function for the city.
In what way?
Well, look at where we started this deep dive. We looked at communities devastated by a fire and a horrific crime. In those moments, the city feels fragmented and vulnerable. But a city isn't just a collection of tragedies, and it isn't just a network of roads and interest rates. It is also defined by its public spaces and shared celebrations.
That's a great point.
When hundreds of thousands of people gather at Commissioners Park to walk among the tulips, they are reclaiming a sense of communal safety and joy. The public square acts as an emotional counterbalance to the private tragedies.
Yeah, the spaces where we gather to celebrate are just as vital to our survival as the institutions that respond to our emergencies.
Beautifully put.
When you pull it all together, the scope of a single 15-minute news broadcast is staggering. It asks you to simultaneously hold space for a grieving family in Brockville, adjust your financial planning based on the Bank of Canada's inflation anxieties,
And understand the geopolitical weight of a West Coast pipeline. Cheer for a hockey team in Sweden and plan a picnic at Dow's Lake.
It is a massive cognitive load for anyone to handle.
And that brings up a really important concept I want to leave you with as you head into your own long weekend. Think about the phenomenon of news whiplash.
News whiplash?
Yeah. Media consumers today are required to perform an incredible amount of emotional agility. In a single commercial break, you transition from mourning a loss of life to calculating your weekend budget.
Wow, yeah, you do.
As you navigate the news cycle, ask yourself, how does this rapid-fire compartmentalization affect our empathy? Does constantly jumping from profound grief to complex policy and then straight into weekend tulips train us to be more resilient and adaptable citizens?
Or does the sheer volume and speed of the whiplash eventually just numb us to the profound realities happening right next door?
Exactly, something for you to mull over.
That is the exact kind of provocative thought that makes examining these core samples so worthwhile. We treat the news as just a delivery system for facts, but it actually shapes how we process the world and how we relate to each other.
It really does.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the layers of our daily news cycle. We hope you take a moment to step away from the headlines, enjoy the tulips, keep an eye on that weather radar, and have an absolutely wonderful, warm Victoria Day long weekend. We'll catch you next time.